Hey there, this is Natalie, and in this video I want to talk about the Fallout TV show on Amazon Prime. Yes, I know I'm normally an anime channel, but those of you who know me on X or watch my streams will already know that I'm also a big Fallout fan. And given I'm broke and my second channel I set up to do Western TV analysis on isn't monetized yet, I've decided to put my Fallout series videos on the main channel. So please consider subscribing for Fallout lore and theory content if you're new here, and if you're not, then you can also expect more of my usual content about series like Mushoku Tensei and ReZero very soon. Now, having watched the TV series, I have quite a lot of theories and observations that I would like to talk about. But in this video, I'd like to look at Cooper Howard, aka the Ghoul, and what might have happened to him and his family, that is his wife Vault-Tec exec Barb and his daughter Janie, when the bombs fell. We see in the very first scene of the show that at the time the bombs fell, Coop and Barb have divorced, which we can assume from later scenes is due to him finding out what Vault-Tec's plans actually are. Though we don't know specifics like if he left her due to disapproving or if they argued over it and she ultimately chose Vault-Tec over him. They seem like a very happy and compatible couple earlier on in their timeline, so this has to be an example of Vault-Tec's machinations dividing the family, whatever else happens later. Barb claims that she's worked this hard in order to ensure they got into a good vault. Coop doesn't understand why that's important. He has a lot of money too as a movie star, and so he believes they can just buy a unit in a vault. So Barb doesn't need to do this. He talks about a vault in Bakersfield, California, which to him seems perfectly suitable. But Barb says this isn't one of the good ones. Barb looks very much like she said something she shouldn't have when she discusses good vaults. Now, we know from her later meeting with major stakeholders like House and Sinclair that Vault-Tec were going to pitch the idea of companies like theirs claiming vaults to use for experiments. She knew there would be bad vaults to be placed in, sold as safe places to live if, or as she knows, when the apocalypse comes. She wouldn't yet know what kind of experiments these would be, or perhaps how messed up they would get, as it's not until that later meeting scene that people start proposing experiments they'd like to do. But she would know that certain vaults had already been earmarked for Vault-Tec executives, and that these would not be available to be claimed for experimental uses. Bakersfield was not a good one, and though she wouldn't yet know what would happen there, we do from the games. Bakersfield, California was home to Vault 12, which featured in the original Fallout game, and here's its description from the wiki. Constructed under the sprawling metropolis of Bakersfield, Vault 12 was built with every amenity in mind for the prospective Vault dweller, and that it had been fitted with the newest in-vault water purification systems, able to take even the waste located in the sewers of Bakersfield. This system is able to deliver over 15,000 gallons of pure, refreshing drinking water every day. Those who signed on for this particular vault took their preparedness very seriously, earning the Pressed Vault Suit Award for their efforts. The vault's true purpose, however, was to discover the effects of radiation on the residents. To ensure this, Vault-Tec designed the vault door not to close. On October the 23rd, 2077, the populace of Bakersfield learned that the other vaults had been sealed. In desperation, they took to their local shelter, forcing their way in to protect themselves and their families. The door worked as designed. The radiation flooded in, and those who survived suffered from ghoulification. In the summer of 2083, the survivors would leave the shelter. Those that chose to stay founded the city of Necropolis. So everyone who went to this vault was exposed to radiation and either died or became ghouls. Some stayed and formed a community there, others just went off into the wasteland. I think then that it's a strong theory that after his conflict with Barb over the Vault-Tec secrets he'd learned, Coop refused to be part of her plan and just bought a place at the Bakersfield Vault, as he'd suggested before. This is where he became a ghoul and his post-apocalyptic life began. This can also tie into theories about why he, and ghouls that he knows, seem to have either the knowledge of or the belief in a chem of some kind preventing ghouls from turning feral, even though non-feral ghouls throughout the game series have never mentioned needing this. But that's a topic for another theory video. Here, I would assume that Coop is racing off at the start of the series on horseback with Janie to go to his vault in Bakersfield. But of course, we can tell Janie didn't end up there with him, because when he confronts Hank McLean, he asks where his family is, not just Barb. That means both that he doesn't know what happened to Barb or Janie, but also that he has reason to believe that they're both still alive after 200 years, just as he and Hank have survived by very different means. Now, a lot of people assume that the vault Barb was trying to get them into was Vault 31, where Hank, Betty, Steph, and others had been held cryogenically frozen in order to serve as managers and mentors for the future of humanity, by being decanted periodically into Vaults 32 and 33 to become overseers and breed with the normal humans in those vaults, upholding good corporate values and leading the people in 32 and 33 and their descendants in the right direction. But this doesn't really make sense. Vault 31 was Bud's brainchild, and the people he chose for it were promising young executives. We see both Hank and Betty pre-war, and they're clearly low on the corporate ladder. Bud intended to raise them up as the next generation of leaders, keeping himself as the overseer for the life of the project, even by becoming a brain on a Roomba. But he was, it seems, either a similar level to Barb in the company or junior to her. Barb was there presenting to people like Robert's house. She made what would end up being key PR decisions, like using Coop's signature colours for Vault-Tec. And she was even the first to say in a persuasive tone that war never changes. She really couldn't be one of Bud's buds, and so the management vault she talks about just won't be Vault 31, but a true elite vault for senior executives. This would also allow for the idea that this would help Janie. There are no kids in Vault 31, and who would even raise them if there were? Bud's buds are young junior executives who don't have families yet, but a vault for senior executives looking after their own best interests when the bombs drop, something they'll make inevitable if they have to, would account for older managers who would have families to bring with them. So Barb presumably was or is in this elite management vault, which actually does oversee the other vaults. This is compatible with the lore we know about from other vaults, as there have been examples of vaults where there was some correspondence with Vault-Tec. So it's reasonable to think that there is some kind of management structure in place. We can also assume that when the bombs dropped, someone from Vault-Tec intercepted Coop and Janie and took Janie to the vault Barb had arranged. Barb could have had a tracker on Janie, for instance, as we see that this is a functionality that the Pip-Boy has, and Barb does have a Pip-Boy. Now, it does seem that Barb didn't actually expect the bombs to fall on the day that they did. Otherwise, Janie wouldn't have been off with her dad at a birthday party on that day. And this could mean that while Vault-Tec were willing to drop the first bombs, that may not be what ended up happening. Something that's also supported by Robert House, who was present at the meeting when Barb proposed that they could do this, talking to us in Fallout New Vegas, saying that he'd also been expecting the nuclear apocalypse to start a little bit later, which is why he never received the platinum chip before the bombs fell. It was supposed to be delivered the next day. So basically, the bombs fall sooner than Barb expected. Vault-Tec track Janie and intercept Coop as he tries to ride to his vault in Bakersfield. Perhaps they had the intention of taking just Janie, perhaps Vault-Tec had the intention of taking both of them. This depends on what the nature of Barb and Coop's breakup was, and whether she still wants to protect him as well as their daughter. Now, Coop would refuse, even if going to the management vault was an option for him, because he now thinks Vault-Tec are evil. But he may also think it's safer for Janie to go there and allow her to leave. Or they may have taken her by force. We'll probably find out later in the series. But it is a reasonable way to explain why Coop doesn't know where his family is, even though he was with his daughter when the bombs fell. But we know Cooper lived this long because he became a ghoul. We know other characters are still alive because they were cryogenically preserved, something we knew was done in some vaults due to that happening to the player character in Fallout 4. But these aren't the only ways people from the pre-war have survived for the past 200 years. There are also things like robo-brains, and even supernatural things that preserve life, as we see in the Cabot family questline in Fallout 4. And there's also the tech that House used. This means there are loads of options for how Janie and Barb could be now. Maybe Barb and the other executives are all robo-brains now. Maybe Janie escaped the vault and became a ghoul in the wasteland. Maybe they were frozen and Janie was unfrozen long ago and is now an old woman, like Sean in Fallout 4. All of these are possibilities, as are things like Enclave technology. For instance, maybe Barb is some kind of mutant now. It'll be interesting to see where the writing goes, but I definitely think Vault 12 is in Coop's history. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments, and as always there's a link to my coffee in the description if you want to help me out with my brokenness, or hire me for custom voice recordings, or to edit your own writing. Please like the video and subscribe if you want to see more Fallout theories and analysis on this channel, and thanks for watching this one. I hope to see you again very soon.